Welcome back to DLP-Art and Stories YouTube channel. In this video, I'm going to share about the lore and world of my original dinosaur fantasy novel, Iara's Crossing, and its work-in-progress sequel, Iara's Ascendance. The characters in Iara's Crossing, along with its settings, have a long history in my personal life. The story began when I was a kid. It was originally a Jurassic Park meets Sonic the Hedgehog fanfiction, and the character Raptor, later renamed Iara, took on a story and a life of her own. When Iara's Crossing became a serious draft, I wanted to make a comic book. The story was a dark sci-fi concept. Iara was a retro-engineered dinosaur that was forced to kill all humans she came into contact with, save for her scientific creators and supposed dinosaur allies. She managed to flee the brainwashing scheme of the scientists and survived on her own in the depths of the Amazon rainforest. I scrapped the idea in 2008 to 2009, and I didn't return to it until a decade later when I revised the story of Iara entirely and turned it into a novel called Iara's Crossing. Iara's Ascendance will become a comic series, and that picks up where I left off, in a way. Early on, the characters of Raptor and Velo, the lead protagonists in my story series, became Iara, Tlak-Tok, and Atumbanu. Atumbanu was later revised as a new character in Iara's Ascendance. The color scheme for Tlak-Tok was changed in the novel, but this will return in the new character as part of the sequel in Iara's Ascendance. Besides the main and pivotal secondary characters, the creatures and places in Iara's world are referenced according to her point of view. This naming scheme will continue in Iara's Ascendance. I also want to explain the mythos behind the names I chose for Iara's Crossing and Iara's Ascendance as well. The main and pivotal secondary characters in Iara's Crossing and Iara's Ascendance are named after a variety of deities from different mythos surrounding river systems. Iara, and the correctly written here, misspelled in the novel, Tlaloc, are Tupi and Aztec deities of the Amazon River. I'll explain more about Iara's mythology on the next slide. Wadjet and Ra, not shown, are Atum, Benu, and Taweret, are all gods associated with the Nile River in Egypt. Their forms are also associated with crocodiles, herons, hawks, and snakes, creatures of the waterways in both the Amazon and Nile River systems. Kunyani is derived from the name given by the Palawakani people in Tasmania, Australia. Again, an indirect reference to river systems there, starting with the mountain Kunani and ending in the South Pacific and Southern Oceans. When finding new names for my dinosaur characters, I wanted mythological names that had significance with where they lived, as well as matching their appearance and significance to the stories that they had. I did research on these names prior to including them. It's not just because they sound cool. All the same, I'm happy to edit them in future editions of the novel Iara's Crossing and the upcoming comic series Iara's Ascendance, if requested by anyone from the above tribes. I chose river systems because in human civilizations, every single one originated within a river system. In making my own dinosaur civilization, it made sense to me to have a similar choice of location, and the names of the characters reflect in this. All of these characters are leaders in some way, shape, and form, and Iara is developing into one as well throughout Iara's Crossing and Iara's Ascendance. The mythology of the goddess Iara is interesting. A Tupi goddess of the waterways, Iara was a warrior living in the rainforest of the river systems in Brazil, a leader of her tribe. She was envied by her brothers when she ascended to take her father's place, and killed. Afterward, Iara was transformed into a mermaid. She supposedly dragged unsuspecting victims into the water, and either drowned them or mated with them, keeping them as part of a harem underwater with her. In some tellings, she becomes a boto, a river dolphin. This storyline has fascinated me, and Iara's Ascendance will definitely build on this mythos in some ways. The pivotal dinosaur characters in Iara's Crossing and Iara's Ascendance have the ability to harness the elements. In my story, those include wind, water, fire, earth, and time. They're able to do this through the presence of ammonites. There's rules to my magic system, and I want to discuss those here. The rules mentioned briefly here will be expanded on in Iara's Ascendance. The feathered dinosaurs in my stories hold ammonite fossils and living ammonites in high regard. Their spiral shell represents immortality, the continuation of a cycle in time. When a dinosaur wears an ammonite, a symbiotic relationship with the bearer begins. The bearer is given incredible power, tied to the ammonite in the blood of the dinosaur itself, at a cost. The ammonites have an innermost chamber, and it's here that their true power resides. The center of the shells the warrior feathers wear creates a bizarre ooze that has its own bioluminescence. This ooze will be further explored in Iara's Ascendance. What is known is that when the warrior feather wears an ammonite shell, it affects their physical body, and it creates immense pain. Iara suffers this pain the most in her legs, and it forces her to stop running and potentially become paralyzed. In Clepsydra, who was Iara's mentor, it affected her heart and her remaining eye. While the ammonite can grant the wearer a long life, the energy it yields is limited, and the wearer, if not attuned properly to the energy fields that the ammonite provides, will potentially die from the power that it holds. Elemental magic, in the form of wind, water, fire, earth, and time, can be harnessed by those who wield the ammonite. Again, this magic is used to protect the wearer and those they're connected to, but at great cost. If not channeled correctly, dangerous events can occur in the natural environment. These include things like flash flood events, forest fires, volcanic eruptions, earthquakes, and even time slips through the fabric of space-time. These events alter the present, but never the past, as Clepsydra, Iara's mentor, warns in Iara's Crossing. The tyrants, the so-called Big Bad in Iara's Crossing, seek to use the power of the ammonite to wield control over the lands they dominate, and wish to usurp from the warrior feathers and the dinosaurs they protect within enclaves across either side of the divided continent. A side effect of the time control aspect is shape-changing. Shape-changing involves channeling one's innermost energy to transform into another being. This is most often a mammal, a saurian, or a so-called advanced avian. Some warrior feathers can harness this ability as younglings prior to initiation. Other creatures can steal this energy, as tyrants do. Shape-changing is a defense mechanism. It's how the wearer adapts to sudden changes in the environment. It's one of the most draining aspects of warrior feather energy, and it's also the most prized side effect by the tyrants. Iara's Crossing is set on the west coast of a continent, similar to how North America was, from approximately 105 to 66 million years ago. The continent was divided in half by the Western Interior Seaway, a vast shallow sea that stretched from what's now northernmost Canada to the Gulf of Mexico. Iara's journey across the western half of this continent takes approximately 4 years of her life, from hatching in the forest enclave to following one of her mentors, Moongaze, through the curled chambers, a hollow lava tube cavern below the Fire River Mountains, akin to the Cordilleran Ranges, to the desert, and then, eventually, the shoreline, where she happens upon the oasis. Iara grows up in ancient evergreen conifer-rich forests, laden with ferns and cycads as undergrowth. The evergreens were on par with sequoia trees that stand hundreds of feet tall. Eruptions from the Fire River Mountains east allowed for the fertile land she was raised in to develop. Once Iara undergoes initiation, she's marked with her ammonite scar by her adoptive father Ra. She sojourns to find Clepsydra, her true mentor. Clepsydra is hidden away in limestone caverns beyond the Fire River Mountains in a place called the Oasis. Ammonite fossils are so plentiful in this area that they create paths from the mountains to the Oasis entry point. The desert beyond the Fire River Mountains is a bit like today's Mojave Desert in the west. It's got gravel sand deposits that give way to expansive sand dunes. It's here that Iara encounters the giant saurian blue and fends off pterosaurs, which she refers to as skinwingeds, in her quest to arrive at the oasis. Iara and Tlaktok manage to fight off Woundtooth and her mate Moongaze, with Iara's newfound power of time shifting. She summons the living ammonites in the rising western interior seaway, drowning her foes and using them to carry her away from the lava-burned oasis. Tlaktock's new bower becomes a home for him and Iara, but Iara's not satisfied with her settled life. Something calls to her on the horizon. Iara senses that the tyrants of the East are on the rise and knows deep within that her journey is far from over. Thus, Iara's Ascendance begins. Iara's Ascendance reveals an entire new world to Iara and Tlaloc. They must venture across the treacherous seaway to help the warrior feathers of the East. New colorful characters are introduced in Iara's Ascendance. They include Bill and Kunyani, surf-loving avians of Selasphorus' flock. The coves surround the shoreline of the East, where Kunyani patrols at night in his shape-changed form of a spotted dolphin. Selasphorus, or Rufus, as Kunyani and Bill refer to him for short, is a single-clawed insectivorous warrior feather. He is as ancient as Clepsydra, and like her, can shape-change into a myriad of creatures at will. His form of choice, comically, is the Rufus hummingbird. The interior seaway is stacked with oceanic reptilian predators. Swift fins, depth hunters, and sea tyrants compete for the shallow sea fish and available patches of sunlight. To the east of the coves is an immense forest. Could more of Blue's kind be here, waiting for the warrior feathers and for Blue to arrive home at last? Iara's nightmares of tyrants continue as the storm of the 100 turn, or the century, arrives. Will she and Tlaloc arrive in time to help the coves, or is all lost to the rising tide?